Imagine a day where 30% of crops and 90% of wild plants are gone. Let me start off saying that I love all living things, and as a 6-year-old, I exceptionally loved things that could fly. My great uncle used to babysit me, and when he was outside, that meant I could be outside. He had lots of old cars on his property, and being 6, I discovered every crevice of that car that I could. This included the gas tank cover. One day I opened up the cover and discovered a not so happy wasp family. I got a sting on the right side of my cheek from one of the wasps. Since that day, I preferred bees ever since. I know most of you know the basic facts about honeybees, like how they make honey and pollinate flowers. But during this speech, I would like to inform you and explain the jobs of honeybees and what they carry out, lives of honeybees, and colony collapse disorder and ways we can help. There are so many reasons on how honeybees help the earth thrive. One being, honeybees are Earth's greatest pollinators. Pollination is the fertilization of plants, and in order to pollinate something, you need a pollinator, pollen, and something to pollinate. It's pretty simple. But pollen comes from male plants and is transferred to the stigma and then to the ovule of a female plant. Once the pollen is germinated, this creates the seed, and that's the process of fertilization of plants. And honeybees are pollinators by fate. They actually collect the pollen and nectar as food for their colonies. But while they collect the food, they fly from plant to plant, and according to Nature Conservancy, May 4th, 2017, article Journey with Nature, one bee can visit up to 5,000 plants a day. This allows the spread of pollen between these plants. Native honeybees are dominating pollinators. They help native plants thrive within the region that they are indigenous to. They fly faster and they are accustomed to the land and weather already. This provides less chance of the colony dying and helps the colony flourish, able to pollinate more. Now that we've kind of covered the jobs of pollinators, let's go into the lives of honeybees. Honeybees live in colonies or swarms. They are about half an inch long and they live up to be 5 years. They live inside of a beehive, and this is where the honeycomb is. A honeycomb is a two-sided wall, and it's made up of beeswax that the bees make, and they're little hexagon-shaped cells, and they store the pollen and larvae there. There are 3 kinds of honeybees. We have a worker bee, and that's a female, but it's not fertile, so it can't have any larvae of its own. But this is the bee that you see the most outside of the hive, and it collects the pollen and the nectar, but it also builds, protects, and cleans the hives. Then you have the queen bee. In order to have a prosperous hive, you have to have a queen bee. The queen bee is the only bee that can make babies, and it's the only fertile bee. But once the queen bee dies, according to Joel B. Sartor, June 14, 2017, article Honeybee, workers will create a new queen by feeding one of the female larvae an exclusive diet of food called royal jelly. This makes the bee fertile and ready to have larvae. Lastly, you have the male bees, and they're called drones. They live in the hive during the spring and summertime when the flowers are blooming and food is abundant, but during the winter and fall time, they are kicked out when food becomes scarce. But moving forward, with the knowledge we have acquired about bees, let's discuss the fall of the honeybees. The fall of the honeybees stem from colony collapse disorder. Colony collapse disorder, according to Jim Mason, February 20th, 2017, article Honeybees. Colony collapse disorder, or CCD for short, refers to the mysterious malady affecting domestic honeybees that causes them to leave the hive and not return. This ultimately is the collapse of a colony. Colony collapses, their characteristics is the adult bees leave the hive, leaving the young adult bees try to maintain the colony. But we found out that this isn't enough workers for an entire hive, and then this also leads to the collapse of a colony. But ways to help are very simple. You can plant native plants within your area, and this helps provide bees and native wildlife food and habitats. And then reduce the use of pesticides and herbicides. Pesticides and herbicides are not contained to the specific plants that you want them to. They can be blown off by winds, they can be washed off by water, and they can be carried off by pollinators. And they're also not safe to eat if you don't wash them off correctly. And pesticides and herbicides are not good for human consumption. But in light of the information given, I hope that you walk away with some new knowledge about honeybees, like how bees are the greatest pollinators, and without them, the wildflowers and crops would suffer greatly, as well as some understanding about the lives of honeybees, such as the 3 different kinds of honeybees and their set of characteristics, and most importantly, what colony collapse disorder is and simple ways to help bees thrive again. And remember, a day without bees is a day without 30% of today's crops and 90% of today's wild plants.